Welcome back to another action-packed episode of Spector Creative with me, your host, Scott Toy Guru Neitlich, longtime collector and also longtime toy worker bee. And by that I mean, yes, I was a worker, or am a worker, but I used to work more in the factories. And the toy factories, while we all like to think that they look like this kind of Augustus Gloop death trap, it's much more like a traditional office. There just might be a few more reference books for Star Wars or G.I. Joe or action figures, collectibles laying around because, well, you're working on them, but not really because you're collecting them. I mean, unless you're Bill Beneke here, who's the rare example of a collector and a toy designer. That's why he makes such awesome stuff. All right, so getting into the toy industry obviously takes a lot of knowledge about a lot of things, but running a toy line first and foremost takes business 101, and this was really eye-opening when I entered the toy industry as a collector and not a business person, but I quickly learned that you can learn about properties very, very quickly. There's encyclopedias, and there's documentaries, and there's websites, and, things that teach you very quickly. You can't just grow instant knowledge of how to get product from an idea to shelf. This is something that usually takes a lot of experience, or for the most part, a formal education like getting an MBA. Now, there's obviously the whole, starting in the mailroom scenario, and if you're a fan of Secret to My Success, this might be your route. It's more or less what I did, because I did not come in as a business person. I came in as a copywriter. But what really kind of shakes reality when you're looking at a toy company, especially when realizing they're just a company. I'm not talking about Mattel or Jax or Spin or Hasbro. I'm talking about all of them. And obviously we want to unleash our inner geek and imagine that in these toy factories, these toy headquarters are filled with people that are kit-bashing Mr. Potato Head with Barbie legs and calling it the latest I Love You Garfield. But to really frame the argument and to understand that these people are not necessarily toy makers, they're more business people, which is what they should be. There are toy makers, there are designers, but most of the people who work in a toy company are business people. And while it is a lot of fun because you're working on toy product, it's much more like a regular job where you have to get product A to the retail stores. And the best way for collectors to think about it is just pretend the company is making, cogs or bookends or lamps. Because, well, once you just turn it into data on a page and stop thinking about it emotionally, it becomes so obvious that this is just yet another business that is run, that brings joy, but it also has a lot of responsibility because you are the gatekeeper for both the company you work for and the IP you're working on. So there's a lot riding on your shoulders as a toy business person. And for that, well, you do have to be really serious all the time. And obviously, coming in as a fan myself, there was a lot that I wanted to jump and do. And I knew that inventing a machine to fuse together broken He-Man toys while something that the fans were demanding just was not in reality. Instead, well, you had to focus on what was the lifeblood of the company, and that was making toys not necessarily for people like me, but for the vast, vast majority of shoppers, which are parents, grandparents, gift givers, and kids. But with all this business going on as a collector, well, you would think there's some fringe benefits, and there were. There was absolutely shining stars within the world, and one big unexpected one for me was what was called the store check, which is probably what it sounds like. It's about going out of the office and actually going to retail and observing what's selling, what's not, and more importantly, observing customers and how they interact with product, both yours and the competition. And everyone on the team was encouraged to do this as much as possible. And to say this was everyone's favorite activity, well, I wish I could say it was. I mean, obviously going to toy stores is fun, but it takes a lot of time, especially because you then have to come back to the office and draft up a whole report about what you saw and what trends, what issues there might be. Now, it did get you gold stars, though, and the people who did hit toy stores, it was definitely appreciated by management. And I have to say, I think it's kind of one of the sort of little combustion engines that helped propel me through the ranks was that, well, I didn't just, stop by the toy aisle when I was making my weekly Target run, which is kind of what most people did. They would, count that as a store visit. For me, it was like, wait a minute, you're going to pay me as part of my job to go to toy stores and look at toys and tell you what I think? I'm like, excuse me? So yes, glory, glory, hallelujah. I was like, whoa, what a cool fringe benefit that wasn't even intended. So yeah, basically my toy hunting completely was legitimate business because I would go and after every store I'd hit, I'd write up a report and say like, here's what I saw. But I have to tell you, I learned so much more than I could have expected. I learned about things like planograms and how important it is to keep product where it's supposed to be and why it's organized that way. Because I'll tell you, and I wasn't expecting this even after I became a parent, but buying toys for kids is really hard, especially for your standard adult. Yeah, us adult collectors might know, a little bit more, but that's why most parents will bring their kids with them when looking for gifts, especially when you're buying a gift for a kid you might not know, like a friend's child or a more distant relative. Do they already have this character? Do they already have this board game? What do they even like doing? Unless you live with that child, it's a challenge. And doing these, what are called store checks, for me, toy hunting, for several years in the toy industry at several companies really opened my eyes to how difficult it is to shop for toys as a parent. And not to say working in the toy industry isn't a lot like, floating down a chocolate river. There's obviously some really cool fringe benefits. But learning to really slow down and pay attention to what's happening at retail is unbelievably, I guess, mind expanding. And especially for, those of us who are adult collectors who are very passionate and, we're used to waiting in line for long periods of time for information and to, learn things and see things first. Hey, I would encourage people, on a Saturday or Sunday to literally hang out for the day and watch the toy aisle and watch how parents shop. I think it'll really make you realize how grateful we are to be getting the stuff we are because we're not by far the most common customer in that toy aisle. And really observing the way non-collectors shop is one of the best ways to realize this. I hope you enjoyed this video. It was a cool insight into some of the fringe benefits of working in the toy industry, especially as a collector. I hope you can share this video with others. It's the best way to support the channel. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next time.